Today I'm going to answer a filmmaking question you've probably never asked before, and that is, what do you do when you have a free afternoon and a case of the lightest cinema lenses on the market that you didn't pay for? To me, the answer is obvious. You make shitty rigs. And look at this, we got crane shots, we got dolly possibilities. Clearly this is ridiculous, right? We're all on the same page about that. Always important to preset your focus. This rig will not support wireless follow focus, unfortunately. Most professional grips would be on board with this. Is there cars? It's tilted, but it looks great. It's super cool. So last week you might have seen me do a big comparison of affordable cinema lenses to see which ones I'm going to be using for an upcoming doc, 6-part series that I'll be DPing. Well, right after I finished that, I got an email from a company I'd never heard of asking me if I wanted to try one more set. And I'll be honest, I wasn't really that interested. They've got kind of a weird name, they don't have a lot of history in the lens business, and I'm not really interested in just hoarding lenses that I'll never use. But then I read the tech specs and completely changed my mind, because apart from the fact that these are T1.5, which makes them quite a bit faster than any of the others I tested, there's one thing that makes them really interesting, and that's weight. Because these Thypoch Simera-Cs weigh 2.5 times less than something like this DZO Vespid, and these are already considered pretty light as far as cinema lenses go. And just in case you didn't know what I was talking about in the intro, a shitty rig is just an industry-wide nickname for a camera setup where you use some unorthodox low-budget solution in place of a professional rig. So like when you see people duct taping tripods to a stepladder or hanging cameras from strings because they forgot their slider, those are shitty rigs. There's no one kind, but if it's still not making sense, there's an entire Instagram account dedicated only to the worst of these kind of rigs, so check it out and you'll get it pretty quick. Anyways, when I realized just how lightweight these lenses are, I mean, this one is under 400 grams or 0.8 pounds, which is less than the weight of an average potato. That's immediately where my brain went. Because as a documentary cinematographer, there are so many times when I need to get a camera into weird positions for things like POV shots, and having super lightweight glass actually opens up a bunch of creative possibilities that just aren't really doable with heavier lenses. I mean, even my 24-70 is almost 900 grams or 2 pounds, so it's a really noticeable difference. So I changed my mind and I wrote back to Thypoch and said if they hooked me up with a budget so I could hire a BTS shooter for the day, I'd be down to take a look. And they were super cool about it and agreed to sponsor the video, which means we get to take a bunch of risks with their gear and get better at filmmaking at the same time. All jokes aside though, even though this is going to be a bit of a ridiculous test in some ways, I'm actually going to be really interested in how these perform, because as a professional DP who travels constantly and has to put my gear in harm's way all the time, having lenses that are super fast at T1.5 and can be rigged into all sorts of weird places without giant stands could be huge. There's also so many times when I actually plan to shoot my whole project on Fuji Cinezooms, but I'll bring a couple primes just in case. So having options that perform well in low light, they have a nice manual focus pull, and they weigh about the same as a bottle of water is a pretty attractive idea for me. So obviously we can't make every version of a shitty rig out there because there are literally infinite options. But since one of the main reasons I find myself building shitty rigs on my professional jobs is to get unique POV shots, that seemed like the logical starting point. So the plan is to build a series of POV rigs from head cams to car mounts to DIY snorricams, and we're gonna start with the absolute shittiest and get gradually less and less shitty until we have a halfway respectable rig to use. Because even though I'm making this seem really dumb, if these lenses look good too, they're probably gonna be incredibly useful for the kind of work I do. And if you're a run and gun shooter who needs to carry their gear all day, or maybe you work in a remote environment and you can't lug around a 50-pound backpack full of cinema lenses, I think you'll see the potential too. Okay, so we're gonna start with the shittiest of the here because why not? And for a long time now, the only easy way to get POV shots from a character in motion has been to use GoPros and either a head or chest mount. And that does work really well, but if you hate the GoPro look as much as I do, there just hasn't been a quick way to do the same thing with a real camera. You could invest in one of those motorcycle helmet rig things, but they're not cheap, and for the amount of time I'd use it, it's too specialized to be worth it. But now that we have these crazy light lenses to play with, maybe there's another way. So get ready, because it's about to get real here. All right, let's not pretend that this test is anything other than stupid, because it is. We're just doing this one for the memes. We're gonna try and mount the FX3 to the top of my bike helmet as if it were a GoPro. Why would you want to do this, you ask? You wouldn't. I mean, this is kind of silly, though maybe there is a specialty shot where you did want, like, you know, a mountain biking POV or a wandering through a party or something. I can't imagine myself doing this very much, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be fun to try. So yeah, I've got a couple of tools and a vague idea of how it's going to work. We're going to use some Gorilla Tack to stop it from sliding around, then a bunch of gaff tape, and then hopefully in 10-15 minutes we've got a FX3 GoPro. The whole point of this tack isn't to hold it. I'm not that stupid. It's just to stop it from sort of sliding around and give it the best shot of not, you know, wrenching against the tape. Out of curiosity though, let's see what happens with only this tack. It may surprise you to know that the Gorilla Tack on its own is not enough to support an FX3, but we learned a lot. Really forced that in there. Okay. All right. My best guess is that the tack is doing almost nothing, and we're gonna need to be a little bit more aggressive here. So I'm gonna get Hank to put the camera down. We'll pick this up on these two GoPros because I need an extra set of hands. All right. This is f***ing dumb. So leave that there. I'm gonna make a giant tape ball. We need a shim. Hope this doesn't ruin my bike helmet, let alone my camera. All right, gently let off and let's see. Oh, baby. All right, thanks to Hank's extra hands, we managed to wedge a very industry standard piece of cloth under the lens and then tape it down using industry standard gaffer's tape. And now we have the makings of a rig. A lot more tape is needed, so back to work, Hank, but we're making progress. So after no time at all, we have our first semblance of a 4K cinematic action cam, maybe the first of its kind. We're gonna keep adding a little more tape just to be sure, but you know, we could probably roll out of here like this and make it through the day. Great start, only big things to come. Not for amateurs, that's for sure. It's actually not that bad. This is hideous, and I'm clearly joking, but I think that's gonna stay. Just a couple more guy wires of tape there. Oh, there we go. Now we're locked in. That's not going anywhere. Hopefully the Matthews reps are watching. I'd love to do a product collab. Okay, looks to me. I think the real takeaway here is, apart from the fact that lens technology is advancing at an insane rate, is that you should never really listen to professional grips when they tell you that these kinds of things are hard to make, because this wasn't hard at all. I don't know why I'm crouching, as if that's gonna help.
Yeah.
I'm scared to cough. I don't know what more you want. So yeah, I mean, not only is it wildly functional, but I think we look pretty cool too. And look at this, we got crane shots, we got dolly possibilities. You leave the Dana dolly at home. Total unrestricted 360 freedom of movement. And then in a second, we'll take it out and get some POV shots as if you were walking through your natural environment. 10 out of 10 so far. We were laughing earlier. Could you imagine trying this with any other lens? Like, this is so janky. Only with the tiniest, lightest lenses could you even think about doing something like this. Like, I'm not freaking out about the camera falling off, so it is pretty cool. Okay, so we've got the POV helmet cam outside. And one thing we noticed right off the bat is that we're gonna have a ND problem. The FX3 obviously doesn't have built-in filters, and I don't usually work with lenses this small. I mean, the whole reason we're doing this test is because they're unusually small lenses, so none of my filters are gonna work. But in the spirit of the whole rig assignment, we are going to use more Gorilla Tack and modify this 82mm ND filter to fit on the front of this much smaller lens. This is definitely not something you should do at home, and this is a really old filter that's super scratched, so I'm comfortable if this falls off and smashes. Ideally not, but yeah, this is next level. Okay, even with full ND on here, I don't know if it's because there's a lot of light leaking in or what, but we had to stop way down. So we're gonna shoot more at f8 even with full ND. It's a really bright day out here. One weird thing I'm noticing about the lenses, they probably did it on purpose because they think people are gonna be shooting these wide open, but if you look, the iris pull from 1.5 to 2 is this big, and then from 2 to 2.8 gets a little bit smaller. But then once you hit above f5.6, it's like 1 millimeter to change, and you've got sort of almost no throw between f8 and f16. So they definitely think most people are going to be shooting these wide open. But none of that matters. All that matters is that the ND filter is on, the POV cam is ready for real world use. So I'm gonna go back there and get my bike, and then we're gonna get it out there doing what it was built for. My buddy's a grip. He'd totally sign off on this, eh? All right, this is great. This feels good. This feels natural. Yeah, so just, forget gimbals. Just imagine you're doing a tracking shot or a, POV moving through space. You don't need any of that fancy gear. You just get low. It's about posture, balance, cat-like agility. Let the POV cam do the work for you. I can't tilt my head down, so to get anything in frame, I really need to level change here. So if I've done my job right, it should feel like you're right there in the middle of the action as I get my bike and move all my neighbor's hockey equipment. Woo! There we go. All right. So the maiden voyage of the POV cam actually on wheels. Always important to preset your focus. This rig will not support wireless follow focus, unfortunately. Version 2 is working on a 15mm rod extender unit, but it's not ready yet. There we go. Secure with this locking bolt here, made by Small Rig. That felt good, smooth. Some people say it's hard to keep your neck rigidly straight while you ride a bike. Those people are wrong. So that went pretty well. I think most professional grips would be on board with this, but I did find the one thing the union is probably not going to be too happy about, and that's neck strain. It really does require you to hold at an unnatural angle. So, maybe for run and gun crews, it'd be allowed, but maybe up in the narrative world, that might be something we have to kind of refine with future versions. But so far, so good. I would say that this is probably not the most natural bike perspective though. So for our next rig, we're gonna get a bit more grip gear involved and see if we can get an even cooler perspective, if that's possible. Okay, so get all this tape off of my camera before it leaves glue everywhere. I mean, that was pretty fun. It worked a little bit better than I thought. I'm not gonna rush out to use this anytime soon, but being out there on the bike did get me wondering if there was a slightly less shitty, but still shitty rig that we could use to get a more usable perspective for someone on a bike. So I'm gonna break down the POV cam, get out a bit more grip gear, and we're gonna scale things up a bit. We didn't even need the tape. Could have just done it with the Gorilla Tack. It's like cement. Oh yeah, all day. All day, buddy. The really great thing about this whole setup is when you're done, you take the tack and you use it to clean all the gaff tape residue off your camera before it clogs the buttons and the card slots. So we really did think of everything with this one. Oh man. So that last test was obviously really dumb, but it did kind of get me thinking, could we make an interesting POV shot using a bike? I think we can. Still wildly unsafe, but I'm gonna use a bunch of grip clamps. I'm gonna use this arm and then this lightweight grip head combo and see if I can't get something that might actually be an interesting perspective for a biker. The widest lens that Thypoch makes right now is a 28, which isn't super wide for something like this, but let's see what we can get. I'm pretty sure they have plans to expand the line, but for right now, this is the widest one they could send me. My confidence is shattered a little bit. I'm getting less and less sure of these decisions by the minute, but we're gonna keep pressing ahead for now. Yeah, that does not like that. Back to the drawing board. There's always a way. When there's a will, there's a way to rig. I mean, I think the solution is just extra rigging equipment. So give me 1 second, I'm gonna get some more gack. Nothing could go wrong.
I'm feeling optimistic.
Yeah, I'm feeling good about this. There is a significant amount of play. Yeah, I'm into that. There's a bike snorricam. Okay, we definitely need some stability guy wires. I have these tie down straps for camping that may work. There we go. Look at that. It's all about multi-purpose items. I want to make sure that everything can do more than one job. Most importantly, we need to lubricate this whole mechanism with the tiers of the grip department, but we've got plenty of those already, so we're good. Not a care in the world. That's what this rig tells me. Don't make aggressive turns. That's the other. I can't quite tell. Well, we got some mobility. It's kind of an interesting angle, I'm not gonna lie. You don't see that very often. It is crooked. I'm gonna add a second guy wire because this, as the saying goes, 2 is 1 and 1 is none. Is that gonna fit? Well, 2 was too many anyways. I think for this one, we maybe walk it down the hill and then... Yeah, so what you got going on here is, you know, you got the geometry here of this. Yeah, that'll keep her nice and good. Get our ND back going. Yeah. I mean, she don't get much shittier than that, boys. It's kind of cool. So if the helmet cam was our first attempt at POV, this is the refined version, using a lot more expensive equipment, but the same spirit of do-it-yourself energy. Turning is not the strong point of this rig. I'm gonna take her slow. It really changes the center of balance. Oh boy. Oh boy. The hill was a mistake. We should have started this on flat ground. All right, so if you've ever needed a bike riding scene for your film or, you know, an alternate angle for your documentary, give this a go. I mean, just looking at it, it's actually kind of interesting. I've never really seen something like this. Taxi beside me is really eyeing me up. That was a great test. I'm gonna slowly turn around. I mean, it's on an insane Dutch angle. It's tilted, but it looks great. It's super cool. With a bit of tweaking. So there we go. Look at that backlight as well. How cinematic is this? We got backlight, we got the POV cam, everything's working. I think that was a stunning success, and that did not take long at all, and it got the job done. I mean, we are making fun of this so badly, but like, what a cool angle to slip into your film when you don't have a lot of budget. I would not want to do that with a 2-pound or 5-pound cinema lens. I mean, the only reason I'm even willing to try it with that amount of leverage on the end of that is because those lenses are so light. So really cool. All right, that's a wrap on the bicycle portion of the day, but for the next rig, we're gonna take some inspiration from this shot, because this sort of POV looking back, like the Darren Aronofsky Requiem for a Dream shot, was actually called the snorricam. And I have had to make snorricams, not on a bike, but on a person walking. And it can be a really great angle. So we're gonna step it up from how ridiculous this has been to something that I've actually used on a professional job and might come in handy for real one day. So yeah, put all this away and then build our DIY snorricam. The first two setups were a little bit ridiculous, but this one is a bit more grounded in real life because I've actually been asked to do this before. On a shoot in Kenya, the director wanted a shot of a scientist in a bat cave looking back, or if you've ever seen the movie Requiem for a Dream, that angle looking back from a fixed position while it holds on the character's face, that's called a snorricam. And it's a real thing that you might want to try for yourself. It's a very cool look, as you'll see. The issue is that a proper snorricam rig is like huge and highly specialized and super expensive, and there's no way I'm gonna own it. I do this like once every year, once every 2 years type thing. But I figured out on that job that there is a really great DIY solution that you can make using a couple of camping tie downs and this photography belt, plus an old tripod. The problem when I did that last time, it worked by the way, I'm gonna show you exactly how, but the problem I had was that I was using like a 24-70 lens, I think, and it gets really painful. And you'll see why that would be in just a sec. But with this, it's a lot lighter, and I think that's gonna make a huge difference. And when I thought about how to test light lenses on rigs, this was the first setup that I thought of. So yeah, let's go outside where we got a little bit more room, and I'll rig myself up with this snorricam and show you how it works. So there's not too much going on here. All you do is you take the photo belt with the pouch. This is optional. This is a nice to have, but not a must have. Just sort of protects your general crotch area. So yeah, first step, put one of the legs in the pouch and you extend the other 2 legs under your armpits. Tripod lined up right. Yeah, and you can more or less see what's going on there. The next step, you need to actually secure this to the person's body so that they can walk around. So I'm gonna get Hank to put the camera down and he's gonna strap me up in my corset and get this snorricam going. Without the pouch, this still works, but that leg jams right into your belt line. Yeah, so one super thin strap around the waist to keep everything pegged in, and you want this one to be as tight as possible, and that's where one of these cinch down straps is better than a belt. You could find tutorials like this saying use a belt, but unless you have a really specific kind of belt. Okay, and that's, as you can see, like that's surprisingly solid, and we've got our snorricam working. I'll roll on this camera. So that's already kind of working. I mean, again, we have the ND problem, so we're gonna get our super high-tech solution. The neighbors probably think I'm insane. That's not bad. So the cool thing about this perspective is that you get the character's POV as they walk around in their world. If you've ever seen Requiem for a Dream, this is like a very, very cheap version of how they did it. So yeah. DIY snorricam. Some nice backlight. Let's see how these lenses handle flares. Ah, pretty neutral. Nothing crazy. You're definitely not going to be winning any power walking competitions, but the effect is good. These lenses are super fast, and that's what makes them different from a lot of sort of affordable lightweight lenses. These are T1.5, which is really impressive. So let's take the snorricam rig inside where it's a bit darker. Let me get you over the back shoulder. Look at this. That's meta right there. There's not much I can say. You know what a low aperture lens can do, but usually when you have lenses that are super fast and light, that's where the sacrifice is. Like you'll get the f4 version of the 7200 is way lighter, but you're losing light. But somehow these are really low f-stop, really fast, really good in low light. This room is quite dark. So all these tests have been great and really fun to do, but we also need to know, like, are these good lenses or not? So all the lightweight and low f-stop in the world doesn't mean anything, and I haven't seen any of this footage on a computer, so I also want to just shoot a bit more with them. So I'm going to put them on my FX9 so I have some internal ND, make things a little easier on myself and stop using this rig. And then we'll just go shoot some textures and details out on the street and then put everything in the computer so that we can see if these are actually worth buying. Because if these are good lenses, like if they look even halfway decent, I'm gonna keep them, pretty sure. Alright, so that was a ton of fun. It was totally dumb in some ways for sure, but hopefully the silliness doesn't take away from the fact that for me and the kind of remote doc work I do, these are also interesting in a lot of other ways. Like the fact that I can bring 2 of these lenses for less weight than just one of my Sigma art lenses is actually kind of a big deal in some situations. And looking back, there were a bunch of shoots where I would have done a lot to have lenses like this around. Last year I spent over 100 days shooting the Arctic, and we were constantly hiking through like swamps and getting in and out of helicopters and a bunch of other situations where weight was a big deal. But full frame T1.5 primes in a cinema body that are actually nice to use at this weight, that's absolutely wild to me. In terms of what I didn't like, there wasn't a ton that jumped out at me other than the fact that this case that they come in is a little bit silly. It's actually surprisingly well made, but it reminds me more of like a prop briefcase that a villain would use to bribe people in bad movies. I do get that these aren't cheap lenses, and when you spend a few $1,000s, it's nice to feel like you got something for your money, so maybe some people will love it. The case just weighs so much more than all the lenses put together, so at least for me and what I do, I can't really imagine that thing ever coming on the road with me, and it feels like a bit of a waste of resources. But none of that matters if they look terrible, so let's open up my laptop quick and take a look at some of this footage. And just by the way, all these shots are straight out of camera, so the vibe you get off the image is coming from the lens, not a grade. So I already watched these a few times and my first impressions were solid. I'm not really a pixel peeper, and so much of how much you like a lens is down to your own personal taste anyway, so I'm not going to sit here and say that these are either good or not good, because that's really not helpful. What I can say is that these lenses have a definite look to them, and I personally like it. To use a bit of an overplayed word, they have a bit of a vintage feeling that reminds me more of classic cinema than like a hyper modern digital look. Whether or not you like it is up to your taste, but I'm into it. Because of the 1.5 t-stop, the depth of field you can get is also crazy thin on some of these, and I like the way the background falls off in a lot of these shots. One thing I did notice is that the bokeh elements are extremely round on these lenses. Like if you look at this shot of a flower with the sun behind it, you can really see what I'm talking about. Anamorphics and cinema, I guess, tend to be associated with more of like an oval shaped bokeh, but this is some of the most circular bokeh I think I may have ever seen. Again, neither good nor bad, just do you like it? I've never really thought too much about bokeh's circularity though when I'm actually shooting, so I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. It's just something I notice when I'm watching this footage back. And when I look at this leaf shot though, I do feel like the fall off here is really smooth and generally nice looking with the main subject staying sharp. So even though I said these are vintage looking, it's not really a resolution thing because the more I look at these clips, they're not soft at all. Actually, as I really study these, I feel like a major reason I keep describing them as vintage is because of the way they handle chromatic aberration. I'm definitely not going to do a 200% zoom in here because I just don't care, but there seems to be something interesting going on around the edges when you shoot bright, colorful scenes, especially when you're angled upwards towards the sun. Now with DaVinci Resolve and a bit of knowledge, you can do more or less whatever you want with just a couple of slider tweaks, but it's a unique look straight out of camera. It reminds me in some ways of the memory sequences in Civil War shot by Rob Hardy. I found an article that says they actually added that effect in post, so that just goes to show you how flexible modern post tech has gotten. I don't see the fringing all the time though, and I'm a big fan of lenses that have a bit of character to them these days. Digital, and especially 4K digital, can be so clinical and sterile looking to my eye anyways, and I don't feel that way with these. So if you're into that, you'll love the look from the Simera-Cs. And with all this said, these are just my first impressions after like 4 hours of shooting with them. I can't say anything definite about the image quality until I actually shoot a real project with them, so take that into account with everything I say here. First impressions are accurate a lot of the time, but it's not like I know these lenses intimately yet. So, final conclusion, straight up, am I going to buy these? Well, no, because let's be honest, they already sent them to me, and after almost 15 years of shooting full time, I have all the lenses I need right now for my professional work. And considering I shoot 90% of things on my Fuji's cinema zooms, I'm not really in the market for any lenses on the moment, unless 60 grand falls into my lap for like a set of super speeds or something. So it would be a lie to say that I'm going to be swiping my credit card for any lenses right now, so let's just not beat around the bush. But am I extremely impressed with these from an engineering, value, and vibe standpoint? Yeah, definitely. And for some of the remote shoots I have on the calendar in 2025, they're going to be very useful, no doubt. But what if this was earlier on in my career, back when I just, I don't know, gotten my first FS5 and owned a couple of stills lenses and my budget was super tight? That's when I started buying Sigma art lenses because they were the best quality lightweight lenses I could afford that had a decent focus pull on them. But these are actually cheaper than the Sigmas, at least when the Sigmas aren't on sale, and because of the smooth focus ring and the manual iris control and a package that's literally half the weight, if these had been available back then, I would have been very interested. I don't know, if you're a run and gun shooter who values lightweight gear and you want some really nicely built glass with character, you should definitely take a close look at these because they tick so many boxes. Rent them first, do your research, and remember that it's almost always a bad idea to buy gear on credit. But big thanks to Thypoch for supporting this channel and trusting us to go ahead with this crazy video. And if these are the lenses that you've been looking for, you can use the link in the description with the code LukeShipping to get free shipping. See ya.